Hello, how are you? Welcome to Trapping the Time. My name is Pablo, and today I'm going to review a watch that has a history that few can boast of. Only two watches are known to have been on the moon, one of which you already know, the other is this Bulova Lunar Pilot. If there is something that makes this watch truly special, above all other considerations, it is that it's one of only two watches in the world that can boast of having been on our satellite, the moon. Not this model, but the original one, which it inspired. I'll tell you in case you don't know, because it's a curious story. In the 1960s, in the midst of the space race, NASA organised a contest to equip watches for its astronauts, which, as we all know, was won by Omega with its legendary Speedmaster. Well, the Bulova, an originally American brand, tried to win that contract and created this watch, the Lunar Pilot. One of the first pieces created was given to astronaut Dave Scott to test, and he took his to the moon among his few personal possessions which each astronaut could carry. We are, of course, talking about the Apollo 15 mission in the summer of 1971. The story goes that as Omega moonwalked, the mission's official watch broke down. I don't know if the glass fell out or broke, and Dave Scott put on his Bulova instead. This is how on August 2nd, 1971, a watch like this Lunar Pilot made its lunar walk. The curious thing about the case is that this story has not been known until very recently. I think it was in 2015 when the original was auctioned for $16 million, and this fact gave rise to the brand launching this watch that has since become a bestseller. It's no wonder, what a spectacular watch. You perceive in each part of it the story that supports it, because it is a watch with its own personality, yes. And of course, it looks a lot like the Omega model. I suppose that the NASA contest asked for a tool watch with a certain set of characteristics, and that's why they're so similar, not because it's a copy of the Swiss one. It deserves its fame for itself because it was on the moon, and that's cool. That is a point that other watches can only imitate the Omega model, and they don't have that, without that heritage to support it. This Bulova looks a lot, but not that much like the Swiss model. It has its differences. The watch has its own personality and many details, compared to the photo of the Omega. To begin with, it's bigger. This one is 45mm and the Omega is 42. In addition, its shape. It's not so circular, it's more of an oval and doesn't have those very marked facets on the handles, so to speak. This one is more like the tortoise, and the Omega more like the Seiko Samurai. Another detail that's obvious and makes it very peculiar is the shape of the push buttons. Speaking of the dial, they're also very similar, but there are differences. If you look closely, the Bulova subdials are further down the centre. There are many more differences, some subtle, others obvious, but we're not going to analyse one by one either, because I believe it's this watch which has its own personality and has, rather than have to constantly compare it to another, no matter how much the other is the mythical Omega Speedmaster moonwalk. Nobody can argue that it is, even if it was by accident, but it's also a lunar clock, and I think it was only a matter of time before it's a piece that was elevated to the altars by fans, because it's a great clock at a reasonable price. So, I'm now going to focus on this piece. I don't know if I've already said it, but I love it. And, okay, would you prefer an Omega? Well, yes, of course, who wouldn't? But this one gives me something very similar, and for a fraction of the price, at least that's how I perceive it. After all, how much are things worth? I think this topic could give rise to a very long debate, but now's not the time to start that. Let's get on with the review of the watch. So let's go. The first thing I have to comment on is that there are two versions. The first one had a date stamp, and I think they had only finished it in stainless steel. As you can see, the most recent version, and it's finished in black, which to my taste suits it much better. It's also available in steel and another special edition with a gold finish, but that sold out long ago. The main change between the first and this version is the disappearance of the date that used to be between the 4 and 5. This version doesn't have it in that position or anywhere else. Good for that. Neither the watch needs it, nor did the original wear it. Another very subtle but successful change is the typography of the logo. In this version it recovers the original logo and not the current one of the brand. I think those small changes help to make the watch feel more authentic, more of that era. It's awesome. You have the permanent feeling of having a top-level watch because of its design, its size, its history. No matter where you look at it, gives you a special feeling. I don't know if I should say spatial feeling. It's something I've never felt before with any of my other watches. Its appearance, its quality of materials, its finishes, its design, together with its history, are an ecstasy for the eyes and all the senses. For those with aspirational watches, the so-called luxury ones in your collection, you'll surely laugh. But for those mortals who can't enjoy the privilege of having an Omega, which are the vast majority, this is a watch that transmits its legacy and the brand's effort to live up to a history at all times. I attest that they have succeeded. Watch in hand, you wonder if it's necessary to spend $7,000 to evoke the human effort to conquer the moon. This watch delivers that feeling without a doubt, and for a fraction of that money. I never tire of saying it, its design, its quality, its forceful appearance, and everything it evokes when looking at it have made it. Who was going to tell me it was going to be my favourite? A Quartz watch, the most appreciated in my collection, and that's something I still can't believe. The strange personality that is the prominent sapphire crystal gives it a striking feel. I've never seen it on this kind of watch. Instead of placing it at the height of the bezel, they placed it on top, sticking out. On the one hand, it's different, but on the other hand, I find it very attractive aesthetically. And it helps to give a rare aspect that you can perfectly associate with the purpose with which it was created. Go for a walk on the moon, and they couldn't do it so badly when the watch was replaced due to a problem, precisely the glass. Of course, I don't have everything with me when it comes to its ability to resist the passage of time. I don't know if it will splinter or break being so exposed. Hopefully not. Let's just hope the Bulova guys know what they're doing. The watch is large. It's 45mm in diameter, 53mm long between the lugs. It's not that it's very thin either, since it's got a height of 13.5mm, similar to any mechanical watch, and its weight with the strap is 113 grams. I love that everything is black. I don't know for the aging purposes how that colour will resist the passage of time. Aesthetic, I like it much more than its steel coloured version. The matte finish, barring the sub-dials, makes reading the markers in time surprisingly easy. After having passed through your hands so many watches and you think, ooh, why don't they all do this? What is it about reading the time? I have not had any piece that facilitates the task so much. In that sense, it's a superb design. Everything seems to be designed to heighten the indices, the hands, or the tightrometric scale, with their pure white colour, and their arrangement at different levels facilitate a comfortable reading of what we are consulting, be it the time, the chronograph, or the tachometer. The hands are narrow and elongated, shaped like a sword. The hour hand touches the hour markers, and the minute hand exceeds them, reaching the outer ring where the minute and second indices are painted, which, by the way, is at a lower level. The dial that features multiple layers. At the bottom are the minute ring and the 3 sub-dials. At 6, the second sub-dial, where you can see that little treadmill advances twice and not once, which is unusual, every second. At 3 o'clock, we have the chronograph sub-dial in charge of marking the fractions of a second. I have heard on other YouTube channels that the clock has a scale in tenths, but I think it's not like that, since the hand goes round through 20 posts, which would be the tenths and their halves. But since that nomenclature is appropriate, you can't say 5.5 tenths, but 55 hundredths. So I think that this chronograph has a measure not of tenths but of hundredths. Yes, in multiples of 5, that is. It has greater precision than most of its rivals, including the Omega, which does not reach that definition so exactly. At 9, we have the chronograph minute marking up to the 60, that is a full hour. A curiosity about this watch is that the hundredths hand stops as soon as the main second hand reaches 30 seconds. It does this as an energy saving measure, but internally it continues to act so that when we stop the chrono, it indicates the exact measurement. As you can see, if we start it up again, it will act the same. It will move for 30 seconds, then it will stop, but always keeping the measurement internally. All the subdials, as I said, are at one level lower than the main sphere. That and the sunray finish make them especially easy on the eye, as well as adding a bit of shine to an otherwise understated watch. The third hand that remained to be reviewed is the big one, which one might think is the main one on the watch, but it is the chronograph one. Its movement is very reminiscent of that automatic watch style due to its fluidity, but it only works if we press the pusher and start the chronograph. Contrary to the other shorter ones, it has a counterweight and a pike shape, and reaching the tip, it houses a drop of light for the night, which the small ones also have throughout their entire length. The luminous paint isn't bad, but it's a bit far from the quality you expect for such a special watch. In the middle layer of the dial is the main sphere, the one that houses the hour markers, which are bar-shaped, a little wider at the 12, the same at 3, 6 and 9. But as these are cut off by adjacent spheres, they appear to be marker remnants but arranged differently. So the 6 o'clock is completely horizontal, the 3 and 9 are vertical. It's an ingenious design solution and very aesthetically accomplished. And the third level of the dial would be that ring that leads to the tachymeter scale, perfectly disassociated from the rest, not only because it's higher up, but also because of that 90-degree angle at which it descends, almost like a wall, painted matte black like everything else. At the user level, everything is so well defined, so well thought out, that it is a joy to enjoy how functional this watch is. All its aesthetics is based on that. You can easily check what you want, be it the time, the chronograph, or the tachymeter. But the rest of the watch is at the same height. For example, the case with those angular shapes that are so reminiscent of the design style of the 60s, those years of the space race. I love its shape and how it adapts to the different areas of the watch, for the pushers to the shape of the lugs, leaving a distance from one to the other of only 20mm, which is narrow for what could be expected of the 45mm in diameter that the watch has. However, I like it, that nothing steals prominence from the dial. If you look at the watch on its right side, we find a very large crown that is easy to manipulate, although it's hardly visible. It is engraved with the characteristic tuning fork of the brand. The painting has a glossy finish and stands out with the matte of the case, the satin finish of the bezel or the pushers. These, as you can see, have a very special shape, and although it may seem like a solution based on aesthetics, it's the other way round. They were designed to be easily articulated by the astronaut's suit gloves. In addition, its touch is very pleasant because its operation is very mechanical. You know that clearly you have activated it or not because it has a very marked metallic click. So again, aesthetics, functionality, hand in hand. These buttons are not only practical but also very aesthetic. They give the watch its great personality. On the back, we see that the lid is screwed, also made of stainless steel and with a black colour bath. In it, we cannot see much of the text where it explains where on the satellite and what date and on what mission this watch was on the moon. This is one of the few reproaches I have to make about the Bulova, and it's that you can hardly see anything in the text that describes the history of this piece. They should have engraved it after the black bath and not before, so that cut into the paint and allowed the text to be seen better. Here it's hardly visible. And since we are in the turn of approaches, the other small issue, but which hurts us a lot, is that the chronograph hand does not rest exactly where it belongs. As you can see, it's slightly off to the left. Nothing serious, but inappropriate for a watch of this level. So you can see that I find a few things to improve. An important one, the nightlight, and the other two are more aesthetic than functional. The text on the cover, the chronograph hand. Almost all of them minor things next to an almost perfect watch. I am being very demanding, but the thing is that the piece deserves that attention to detail, that there is no room for approach because the watch has such a high level of everything, and this is what it deserves. And speaking of the back cover, the outermost part, which you can also read with great difficulty, that is equipped with a high precision watch caliber, is submersible to 50 meters and which has a sapphire crystal and the other data typical of the watch. And now I just need to review this strap, and I love it. It seems to me quite a success for the piece, that they've put a very soft leather NATO onto it. It's also black and a matte finish, it has stitching that runs through it, which is almost invisible. And its metal parts are in black and have the Bulova name engraved on them. Overall, it gives a sporty, elegant look with an extra security offered by the NATO strap of not losing the watch if a pin slips. And finishing the video, I don't think that I forgot the movement. I've left it for the end because I think it deserves a special mention. The Precisionist system was developed by Citizen, and when it bought the brand in 2008, it transferred this technology to Bulova, an American brand in the beginning, Swiss today, which was famous among other things for inventing Accutron, the world's first electronic wristwatch to feature fully fluid, continuous second-hand movement with no skips. These watches are also known as tuning fork. Today, the Precisionist is considered the heir to those Accutrons, and that's why it makes perfect sense that Bulova is the one who uses those machines. What makes it special is the more precise movement without external assistance in the world. That is, it's not connected to an antenna or radio control devices or artificial intelligence as smartwatches do. Depending only on its internal movement, it's the most accurate watch on the normal market. Come on, surely there are brands offering something similar or better, but surely also at exorbitant prices. Its main characteristic is that instead of vibrating at 32 kHz, which is how normal Quartz do, it does so at 262 kHz. That's 8 times faster. And speaking of its precision, which in some way was already evident in what was explained about the chronograph, although Bulova gives a figure of plus or minus 10 seconds per year, there are many users testifying that the variation is plus or minus 1 or 2 seconds a year. I repeat, plus or minus 1 or 2 seconds a year. That's unbelievable, but that's how it is. To get an idea, we can compare it with the other types of calibers. The mechanical ones are more or less 20 seconds a day, the quartz ones are more or less 10 seconds a month, and this Bulova offers that precision of more or less 10 seconds, but in a year, the same mechanic as in a single day. The count is easy. This watch is 365 times more accurate than my automatic ones. Nothing better than this excellent movement to round off a piece that is admirable, except for a small range of completely minor details. It's a sensational watch, very masculine, a bit of a bad guy because of that dominant black and immense beauty for me, and with the legacy that puts it at the height that others haven't reached. I thank Bulova and Citizen for this watch. I just wonder if it would be possible to make a Precisionist technology compatible with the electrodrive system. That would really be an explosion. I already love, and a lot of what they've endowed this piece with, the best, or one of the best quartz calibers in the world. Thank you for that, and for making the Bulova Lunar Pilot available. Perhaps not to everyone, but to many fans. Bulova, you've earned my appreciation. Citizen, you already had it. I wonder how much this watch would cost if instead of a mark that is represented by a tuning fork, it had a Greek letter on the dial. Just changing that, I'm sure many would gladly pay 4 or 5 times more and would rave about this technology, which few know today, Bulova's precisionist. But the market is like that sometimes. Incomprehensible, but somehow wise. Things are not always worth what they cost, as in this case, they don't cost what they're worth. And that's it, today's review. Thank you very much for being there, and if you want to see in the next video, click like, follow us, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks again. Bye bye.